In this series of videos, we shall study Srimad Bhagwad Geeta as the science of action. This world is our karma bhumi, the land or platform on which we perform our actions. These actions produce consequences or karma phalam, the fruits of the actions. The consequences of our actions as well as the actions of others create the context for more actions, and thus the process of actions and their consequences goes on. Karma Bhumi is thus multidimensional. Its dimensions are space, matter, non-matter, time, actions, consequences of actions, and a system of pap and punya, that is, sins and redemption. Let us say that a plus 2 student clears his exams. This action of his creates the context for his next action, namely seeking admission in a college. In this complex chain of actions, consequences, contexts for new actions, more actions, time plays an important role as it divides all the other dimensions into three portions: those which have already taken place, those which are now taking place, and those which are yet to take place. Time is thus a great reality of this creation or Srishti. Everything that is a part of creation has to be a part of the present, the past, or the future, and is mutable with time. Only God is beyond time and is immutable. That is why Maharshi Patanjali in the 26th Sutra of the Yoga Sutras describes God as Kalin Anavachchedat, that which is not limited by time. Let us try to understand the nature of karma and karma phalam, the actions and their consequences, with the help of an example. Let us say that this is the karma bhumi. This line represents the present time t. To make our example loud and clear to understand, let us say that A wants to murder B. Let us call this action AM. Let us say he wishes to do it at time TF, which is a time in future. The context for this act will be made up by a number of elements. Let us say at time Tn, A noticed something about B which made him so angry that he decided to murder B. Thus, the consequence of that something done by B became a constituent in the context for the action AM. At time TB, A bought an illicit revolver from a shop. This act of buying and possessing the revolver becomes a constituent element in the context for AM. Let us say that a cyclone hits on the day when A was to murder B. Therefore, B does not stir out of his house and A does not get the opportunity to murder B. In this way, the cyclone becomes an element in the context. Let us imagine that when A was on his way to murder B, his revolver was seized by the police during a vehicle check. These are just a few elements that constitute the context within which the act is omitted or committed. We could think of a number of other elements. For example, the jurisdiction inspector who permits the manufacture of illicit weapons in the shop from which A buys the revolver is also creating a context for this murder. The persons who manufacture these illicit weapons also contribute to the context of the murder. In one of the future videos, we shall be discussing whether those whose actions contribute to the creation of the context of an action are also responsible for the pap or punya involved in that action. For the time being, let us look at another very important constituent of the context, namely The decision of A to commit or not to commit the murder, that is his moral choice. From the point of time when he decides to commit the murder to the point when he actually commits it, a number of influences could change his decision. He might listen to a sermon by a saint and decide to leave B's action to God's judgment, or he might read something which gives him justification for the act he is planning to perform. The point is that an act is committed within a complex context made up of the physical environment, the consequences of one's earlier actions, the consequences of other people's actions, and one's moral choice. The context of an action confronts us with a number of options, and we have to choose one of the options or a set of options. This choice is the moral choice. When the Taj Hotel in Mumbai was under attack by the terrorists, the staff of the hotel had to make a moral choice. They could walk to safety or risk their lives trying to protect the guests. Coming back to our example of the murder of B by A, as we move closer and closer to the point of time when the murder actually takes place, the other elements of the context lose their dynamism and begin to become static. Finally, we may say that as we approach the zillionth part of the second just before the murder, the universe comes to a halt as far as this act is concerned. At this point, there is only one thing that matters, and that is the decision of A to murder or not to murder B. To be or not to be, that is the question at this moment of time. It is he who will decide whether to murder or not. The right to decide is his. Karmani eva adhikaraste, says Lord Krishna in the 47th shloka of second chapter of Srimad Bhagwad Geeta. Karmani means actions, ev means only, adhikara means right, te means your. To decide what you shall do is your right. In this situation, when the entire universe seems to freeze and the decision to murder or not to murder is entirely with A, this right is now with him and him alone. That is what Lord Krishna says, Karamani ev adhikaraste. To decide what you shall do is your right. Once A has committed the act, he moves on along with time, but his act now belongs to the past. There is a temporal distance between him and his act. The act is now an independent entity, which is one of the billions of similar entities in the Karma Bhumi field. This act now interacts with other entities of the Karma Bhumi field and produces consequences which A cannot control or determine. If A were to determine the consequences of his act, he should have control over the functioning of the Karma Bhumi field. He should have the ability to influence actions that are a part of the past. In other words, like God, he should be able to be present in both present and past. But the right to manipulate actions of the past has not been given to man. That is why in the second part of the line Lord Krishna says, Ma phaleshu kadachana. Ma means not, phaleshu means fruits of actions, kadachana means at all. Lord Krishna says you do not have the right to determine the consequences of your actions. It is obvious from our discussion that the Karma Bhumi field is constituted in such a way that human beings are given the right to decide their actions but not to decide the fruits of those actions. This is because the actions and the consequences of these actions done by billions of people are interacting in an extremely complex manner. In our next video, we will go into more details and a more detailed understanding of the shlokaha karmani evadhikaraste ma phaleshu kadachana ma karam phal hetur bhurma te sango astva karmani.